Why is the end of the world so popular? How come there are so many stories that take place when humanity has died off? How come zombie apocalypses, cataclysmic events, the end of the world is used so often? When death and destruction are things we actively are afraid of, what makes us seek out this content? Homesick isn't just an emotional state, but a thriller webtoon original series that takes place during the apocalypse. We follow our main character, Rayne, a younger girl who woke up 3 months into the end of the world. Talk about missing your alarm. And man, has the end of the world never looked so pretty. With Homesick's softer character design and oddly beautiful color scheme, sometimes you forget that this is a thriller horror series. But never for too long. As anytime you do, these lovely creatures appear. Mercs. Horrific creatures that appeared out of nowhere and basically caused the end of everything. Each never the same, but each terrifying. Most have the base of humans, but drastically exaggerated and changed. Long necks, spikes for hands, lanky bodies, or most terrifying of all, exactly human. The infected. Like I stated before, we follow Rayne, a girl that woke up 3 months into the apocalypse. Girl that woke up with no memories. Throughout the story, Rayne meets a colorful cast of characters. Anyone from a young child with some serious parent issues, to our other lead, Samael, a tsundere dude with an adorable and aggressive kitten. And most importantly, her guardian angel? A human-ish, merc-ish entity that only she can see and talk to, but one that does definitely exist, being able to see, think, and communicate with Rayne. And to add on to Rayne's mysterious background, she seemingly has a connection with mercs, or at least danger, as anytime something seriously dangerous arrives or is present, she gets a headache, almost like a warning system. There's a lot this series has going for it, and I highly recommend you catch up before watching the rest of this video, since this series works best with fresh eyes and an unspoiled perspective. Link is in the description if you want to check it out. Now, this series has a lot of mysteries that I could try and answer. Why did Rayne lose her memories? Why is there a ghostly entity following her around? Why does Rayne heal basically instantly? Is she a merc? Infected? Option 3? It's probably option 3. But none of that today. I wanted to look at the grand scheme, the big picture. I'll be honest, I was never really a big fan of the apocalypse type entertainment stuff. Especially the thriller horror side to things. Zombies, monsters, the end of the world type things always seem to bum me out. It's the end of the world. No matter how often our characters get into and out of danger, it'll still be the end of the world. It'll still be the apocalypse. However, at the end of the day, I still think that an apocalypse scenario or setting provides a fascinating insight into human behavior. Let me explain. In many of these types of post-apocalyptic stories, the biggest threat is almost never the monster or the reason for the apocalypse, but the people surviving in them. We put a lot of emphasis on the creatures, the monsters, the reason for the destruction, but at the end of the day, those monsters are just monsters. Most are pretty much identical. Once you've dealt with one of them, you've dealt with all of them. The monster is always a threat, don't get me wrong, but now the reader fears them less, but questions them more. Why do they exist? What happened back then to cause them to appear now? Questions that are often never answered. However, what slowly becomes more and more interesting are the humans that are surviving. Since governments and laws and standard ways of life have basically gone down the drain, you get to see people for who they really are. Let's start with our male lead, Samael. Samael is a little bit of a tricky subject. While he's introduced right away in the very first episode, we don't know a ton about him, and that's kind of a common thread with these characters. While we follow them, we barely know them before the apocalypse. We barely see their actions, their motivations, who they really are. Because of this, no one is guaranteed to be a safe or good person, and it's a good way to keep tension up. You never know who to trust. However, Samael is the one person we and our main character, Rayne, learn to trust. But the more we learn about Samael, the more tragic it is. Samael seemingly came from a broken family. His mother was seemingly out of the question and his father left him. The only people he had was a chaotic little sister that he had to look out for, and a cousin that was constantly in trouble with the law and was later arrested. And about a month before the apocalypse, his sister unfortunately passed away due to cancer. We don't really know how Samael survived the first 3 months of the apocalypse, but we know he's one of the few that managed to do so, and manages to do it alone. Well, alone with this adorable cat here. That's when he meets Rayne. He finds her unconscious with a knife in her hand, randomly on top of a roof of a tall building. Right away, we're treated to something different. The true somberness of the end of the world, of the apocalypse. Not just death, not just monsters or scares, but the actual end of the world. Most people would struggle to find a reason to carry on. While I'm not the biggest fan of post-apocalyptic stories, I do love stories that revolve around how characters grow and develop. And weirdly enough, post-apocalyptic stories are probably the best chance for these stories, mainly because we see people for who they really are. I wouldn't say people at their worst, but I think we see people at their most desperate. It's hard to stay motivated when nothing really matters. When all you need to worry about is living, most people lose their morals. But weirdly, it becomes even more important to make human connections. Living by yourself only spells death, whether it be monsters or humans or loneliness. I started this with a question. Why are post-apocalyptic stories so popular? Horror and thriller are all well and good, but there's gotta be more than that. And I think there is. To me, it goes back to everyone's favorite genre, relationships. While that mainly is a joke, it's actually quite important. Not romantic relationships, just standard relationships, just human connections. These human connections are the backbone to every series like this. It's either the reason we keep watching or the reason we stop. You see, stories about people struggling are so fascinating to me, because there's just something so relatable to watching people struggle to survive, struggle to fight, struggle to keep going. There's a certain level of hope that these people have. A hope that keeps them going. While all seems lost, it's comforting to see people like us. People who've gone through heartache and dismay pull through and survive. Because if they can survive the end of the world, who's to say you can't fight through what you're going through? It's gonna be okay. Keep it up. Thanks for watching. Take care.